Here's another thing you mentioned, and because what you're saying is packed with meaning, whether you know it or not. That's why I'm trying to parse it apart. There's also, so you mentioned, there are times when they don't cover the war at all, and
Yeah, they just
on
ignore it.
certain shows, that we need to understand that may be equally important to having contributed to the mess we're in, and the ignorance we're experiencing, as covering something but lying about it. I don't know what's worse, because I have a practice. I will make myself watch Fox News. It's part of my job. I need to know what the other side is getting spoon fed. But there are times that still shock me, although they shouldn't anymore, where something god awful has happened in the world, that maybe doesn't look good for Trump, right? So
Yeah.
CNN's got it, and everybody else has it. ABC's breaking into news, and MSNBC, and I'll go, okay, let me see how Fox is covering this. Well, they're not covering it at all. They're doing a story about puppy dogs or something, and
Yeah.
aren't these puppy dogs cute? And they will not cover it at all.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Often?
Last week was crazy. The last 2 weeks have been really nutty how they've covered the war. Like not last week, but the week prior. I would say, like I said, the 5 covered it on Monday, and then they just stopped talking about it completely. And then the primetime shows were on and off. I believe Ingram only covered it twice. And then last week, if they covered it, it was incredibly short. Like Hannity had a segment that was 30 seconds long.
Wow.
And it was a news break that it looked like his show was pre-taped, because when they have these news breaks where they come in and they just go news break and you don't know what's going on, and it's a different correspondent, and they're like, reporting tonight from blah, 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 blah. And it was like a quick 30-second report about Iran. And that's usually when they've pre-taped the show. They'll stick that in there for breaking news.
Yeah.
And then
he might be on the beach somewhere or something. I don't.
yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows?
He tends to. From what I know, he will tape earlier in the day. And then another thing is, even Jesse Waters last week had a very, very brief segment because the news was just so bad they didn't know how to spin it.
Right. Yeah,
so and just ignore it.
Unbelievable. And then, do you see a distinction? Well, I mean, there's an obvious distinction between daytime and nighttime. They go wild with opinion, and all bets are off. And I don't call that news. But is it reasonable at all to say that, hey, after Fox and Friends and until about 4 or 5 p.m., you're probably going to get straight up news reporting with a bias? No, you're shaking your head violently.
I would say no. I would say no.
No.
I don't watch on a regular basis. I don't watch the midday shows because I was asked when I first put the project together to focus on the shows that get the biggest audience. And that's why it's Fox and Friends, The 5, and Primetime. But I have seen those shows from time to time, and I would say they're still very biased, because they're still, it's the same thing where they won't tell you, or they just don't report on things that are happening, because it's like, a great example would be the Israel-Hamas war, or Israel-Hamas conflict, whatever you want to call that.
Mm-hmm.
They started to report about it when it first started, and then they dropped it, and they just wouldn't mention it. Yeah. So it would be like every now and then they'd be like, oh, something happened in Israel, or, oh, Bibi Netanyahu said something. And then that's it. Like, you never saw Gaza. You never saw the destruction in Gaza. You never saw a wounded child. You never saw a wounded, woman. You would sometimes see men. They would sometimes show like Palestinians, but only if they were male on camera. And you're just like, this is warped. Or another thing they did that was very telling was, at one point, some hostages had died in Israel, and there were massive protests against Bibi Netanyahu's government by Israelis. Massive, like hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in Tel Aviv taking over. And the coverage was shocking because PBS showed aerial drone shots of just this, entire streets being completely filled with humans and these massive protests. And then I turned to Fox, and it was like 200 people off to the side, like just standing there, and they're like, look at the protest. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
And they just act like there's no internal struggle politically inside Israel. Everybody loves Bibi Netanyahu. None of this is true, of course,
Oh, no, not at all.
they act like Bibi is, universally loved.
Yeah.
He has no critics. At the very start of the war, actually, there was a time where they were interviewing somebody live from Tel Aviv, and the man was from Brooklyn, but he also lived in Israel. And he said something disparaging about Bibi, and Brian Kilmeade was taken. He goes, "What? What do you mean?" Like, Brian Kilmeade was shocked, and the guy goes, "What do you mean?" Like, a lot of people don't like Bibi Netanyahu, and apparently that clip like went crazy viral in Israel. I found out later. I clipped it, was just jumping out of my skin, like, oh my god, because they had no idea. Like, the people. Brian Kilmeade was in such a bubble that he didn't realize that there's all these internal struggles inside Israel of people who don't like Bibi Netanyahu. And I'm like, yeah, duh. Like, anybody could tell you that, but he was in such denial, and it was live. So it was crazy because he couldn't control the guest who was like, no. And it was just like, oh my God.
Wow.
And
yeah.
That's my favorite Fox clip, actually.
There's there's kind of two buckets at least. I mean, one is the failure to cover something that's they deem as harmful, and then the other is covering something, but spinning it so badly that it falls into kind of propaganda and heavy bias. And I don't want people to think that the networks that they watch don't have biases, but those biases often show up the most in the morning editorial meeting, right? So, there's a meeting that sets the day, and says, look, this looks like we should be covering this today, and maybe for the week. Here's what's happening Thursday. Somebody's got to cover this. We're going to emphasize this theme this today across the shows. Blah blah blah. And there's great independence, as you mentioned, on the nighttime shows. But and so there's a bias. But the difference I see is, I'm sure Fox News has editorial meetings, but the difference is this hellacious spinning that occurs, and we must cover it this way. I'm not aware of that happening in kind of normal news networks, but it happens in a big way on Fox News. I have to share this story just to emphasize this importance of not covering anything, which is, I'm visiting an aunt and uncle a few years back, and they're elderly. They don't get out much, and they're hardcore MAGA, and they've got Fox News on all the time. So I'm actually sleeping over their house, and I go, hey, dude, look, let's do a favor. Can you do me a favor? Let's turn on the network that I work for, and just 15 minutes. And this is when the child separation policy at the border was happening. And it happens to be Rachel Maddow now. And we're watching really compelling video of kids crying, screaming, being torn from their parents at the border and in cages. And they looked at me in disbelief, like they had never seen this footage before. And they said, this is terrible. This is awful. This shouldn't be done. And then, that was it. That was they went right back to Fox. So
Yeah.
It's ignorance. It's a policy of deliberate ignorance.
Yeah. Like, you'd never know that Gaza is like a complete wasteland right now if you watch Fox, because they never showed it. Mm-hmm. So you'd never see that all these buildings are, completely destroyed, and that people are living in tents, and no matter what you think of that conflict, I mean, that's the reality, and they just don't show it. So you'd never know. And it's especially with like, there's another one that happened when they were fighting in Lebanon. Israel was fighting in Lebanon. I did a juxtaposition of PBS and Fox, and that was eerie, because PBS showed this like completely blown out area. Everything was gray, buildings that were smashed and destroyed, and there no humans. And then I cut to Fox, same story. Fox showed an IDF soldier, green grass around him. Everything was beautiful. And he was just like, no, he had a gun, but he wasn't pointing it at anyone. And it was just like, and that was the same story, just two completely different images. And I was like, oh my God, like, no wonder they have no idea what's going on.